The Nutcracker, first originating in 1816 as a short story known as The Nutcracker and the Mouse King, which would later be readapted as the well-known ballet made in 1892 by Pyotr Ilyich Tarkovsky, which is based off the version of The Nutcracker by E.T.A. Hoffman. The Nutcracker is about Mary and the family nutcracker she grows fond of, until her brother Fritz busts his jaw. Though modern adaptations have changed it a bit, saying that it was given to her as a present by her godfather Drosselmeyer, an inventor/clockmaker. From there, she finds herself in a dreamscape, where there's a war between the Nutcracker with his toy soldiers and the Mouse King with his army. Also, the Mouse King had 7 heads in the original. After slaying the king, they go through many different and enchanting places, depending on the adaptation, only for it to end on it all being nothing more than a dream. The ballet was a major part of my life growing up, as my grandmother took me to see it when I was young, and it was one of the greatest experiences I had that showed me the intricate art of music, beautiful yet difficult dancing through ballet, and was the first time I experienced a story by showing what's going on instead of telling, something that modern Hollywood seems to have forgotten. Speaking of, this has led me into the making of this video, as I wonder how and why Hollywood has been trying and failing to adapt this iconic ballet into movie form. I could talk about every adaptation, but there are so many, it would take me until next Christmas to talk about at least a third of them. So I decided I'll be talking about 5 different versions in movie form, and if you guys are interested, I'll do a possible part 2 next Christmas. But if you want that to happen, just be sure to like and subscribe. So let's begin with the earliest versions of this ballet turned cinematic. Starting with The Nutcracker Prince from 1990, made by Warner Brothers and directed by a Canadian animator, Paul Shub. He mostly worked on animated straight-to-video stuff, from the looks of it, but he was supervising director of All Dogs Go to Heaven 2, and was the creator of a cartoon series called The Raccoons. The movie adds an origin to the Mouse King and the Nutcracker's rivalry, and this will be a recurring thing about all these movie adaptations of the Nutcracker, as for some reason they always like to put the Mouse King, or Rat King at times, as the major antagonist. Is what I would say, but it does turn out some moments are actually based off the original adaptation, such as the inclusion of a Mouse Queen, though instead of Marie, our main female lead is named Clara, and she also has a cat named Pavlova.
This isn't Pavlova?
The movie introduces the story as close to the original as it can, but we don't get towards the actual fantasy stuff until 30 minutes of this 70-minute movie. Weirdly enough, while the Mouse King and the Nutcracker prepare their troops, Clara and Pavlova are just regular size. So why don't they handle the situation while everyone was preparing? Were they in shock or just waiting to see what happens next? She only helps when she realizes the Nutcracker's life is in peril. The movie has quite the cast from Kiefer Sutherland, Phyllis Diller, Peter O'Toole, and Elizabeth Hanna, who you might know for voicing the Servbots in Mega Man Legends. Even with the film being G, it actually has some moments of blood and an on-screen death. Mad respect to when that actually meant something. Though one of the major differences from the original play is that the events of the Nutcracker actually happen in a single night, like it was all a dream, but the events in the film take place on both Christmas Eve as well as Christmas Day after Clara suffers from what could have been a lethal concussion. The animation at times can be surprisingly well done, but that's probably due to the lack of 2D animation in Hollywood, unfortunately. I won't say it's the best animation out there. Unfortunately, the film did kind of bomb in theaters, even being one of the earliest adaptations of the Nutcracker on movie format. There is another early one, but we'll get to that one at the very end. Sure, the animation does have a bit of a knockoff Disney look, but I don't think it ain't all bad. And there were just some moments I actually did enjoy in The Nutcracker Prince. Though that's nothing compared to the next adaptation we'll be looking at, which is, well, pretty nutty. 1999's The Nuttiest Nutcracker. Honestly, I have no words to describe how ridiculous this version is, as this might just be one of the most ridiculous adaptations of the Nutcracker. I mean, just look at this. And just like with the previous one, this one also has a very insane star-studded cast. Though I won't be harsh on the 3D animation, considering the film came out in 1999, the same year as The Iron Giant, Toy Story 2, and all of the other reindeer. Yeah, this movie is bad, but it's on that level of bad that it comes across as funny. I mean, where else am I going to find a version of the Nutcracker with sentient nuts, some of which can be categorized as poorly aged stereotypes, one of which is supposed to be Jamaican but for some reason is voiced by Cheech, has the fattest rat you ever did see, and a Nutcracker with a fat ass and probably the most unintentionally funniest line in cinematic history.
By breaking the hardest nut on the planet.
By breaking the hardest nut on the planet.
True story, I actually watched this with a couple of friends of mine on Twitch. Check it out over there because I can't show it on YouTube. Though it may not look like it, this isn't the worst adaptation of the Nutcracker. That unfortunately goes to our next adaptation, The Nutcracker, The Untold Story, or The Nutcracker in 3D, which released in 2010. And I know you were probably wanting me to talk about this one. This version is pretty well known as not just as the worst adaptation of The Nutcracker, but might be one of the worst Christmas movies of all time. And yeah, I know there's two different names for it, considering it was called The Nutcracker 3D, but that was because that was just a major selling point at the time. And I bet this was something you could have taken the kids to see, right? The story takes so many liberties that I honestly wouldn't really call it a Nutcracker adaptation, only in name alone. Drosselmeyer is replaced with Albert Einstein, unfortunately played by Nathan Lane. Sorry about your career. Marie is called Mary, and Fritz is now Max. Events of the story takes place in a span of a couple of days, and the rats are literally inspired by a certain group of extremists that I'm not allowed to say because it'll get this video demonetized. It also does one of the biggest cardinal sins within the ballet. It gives the Nutcracker music lyrics. And not just any lyrics, bad lyrics. Though the Nutcracker Prince did a single song, it was somewhat of an original song, and yes, I do know that the Nuttiest Nutcracker also did one, but honestly, it was just so ridiculous and funny, I really didn't mind it, because, you know, it was still a bad movie. Here, they poorly try to add lyrics into the songs where it doesn't fit, and of course, it doesn't feel right. I mean, why do you need to know about Albert Einstein's theory of relativity in music form? More specifically, in the artistic way of the Nutcracker. However, my grandma said she's familiar with a lyrical version of The Dance of the Flowers, but that's besides the point. The movie had a budget of $75 million. The film has yet to even earn a third of its budget back, and I recommend you avoid this version, and a good thing too, because I had a hard time trying to find this on any streaming service. Meaning the only way to watch this is by getting a DVD for $10. Or the Blu-ray for $150. And honestly, it's not even worth pirating. Well, after that total garbage fire, let's talk about something that's not as bad, but kinda boring. Disney's The Nutcracker in the Four Realms from 2018. Yeah, it would make sense Disney would make their own version of this iconic ballet. And yes, of course, it would make sense that Disney would always kill off a family member, 9 out of 10 times being the mother. And unfortunately, this was a modern Disney adaptation, where being animated would have benefited for it to stand out. But what we got is a fairly bland by-the-numbers story where most of the story is probably filmed on a green screen set. Though the main lead is named Clara, Marie was the mother's name. And this is actually interesting because the lead tends to vary in each adaptation. With Hoffman's version of the ballet, has Marie as the lead, while in the other versions, it's Clara. So Disney found a creative way to merge both versions of the leading name, though the film is unfortunately kinda dull even with an original story. Heck, I don't actually remember Clara doing much until the literal third act of the film. And I've actually seen this movie twice already, and I didn't even remember the first time seeing it. And I'm probably gonna forget this even existed in the new year. I mean, everyone says how great Clara's mother was, but she basically abandoned her kingdom and threw all her responsibilities to her daughter. What is this, Steven Universe? And even though it's called The Nutcracker in the Four Realms, we only get to see 2 of the 3 realms in the film. But it is nice to see that the Mouse King isn't the bad guy in this version. And if I'm going to be 100% honest, the only memorable thing about this film is the wonderful duet between the legendary Andrea Bocelli and his son, Matteo Bocelli, in the film credits. I actually been looking for the music video itself. It's called Fall on Me. It's very beautiful, and if you've never heard Andrea Bocelli sing in your life, trust me, you have to hear it for yourself. Though what's really interesting is this is the only recent version of the Nutcracker told, in my knowledge at this point, and there haven't been any new adaptations since. But that does lead me to one adaptation where I actually think it does follow the original ballet really well, mostly because it is the ballet, and is probably the first adaptation of the Nutcracker, at least to my knowledge, that I could find. 1986, The Nutcracker, the motion picture. We've experienced many versions of this iconic ballet, but what makes them all similar is that they try to expand the story through dialogue that either isn't important, side characters or plots that are unnecessary, or try to add their own flair to the tale, but always failing in the process. But if you want a film that felt like you actually are going to see the Nutcracker, and that's what this film's all about, as the Nutcracker, the motion picture, feels like you're watching the play, and not as a member of the audience, but like you're up close with the cast and experiencing it. And this one is actually more based on an original adaptation of the ballet, as my grandmother and I were watching this, and she noticed some major differences compared to the one she's listened and seen, and the one she took me to when I was a wee lad. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to remember that. I can barely remember what happened last week. Not only that, we actually own the book the art was actually based off of, which was done by Mori Sendra. I recommend also checking the book online and to see if it's still available, as it actually does go in depth of the story of the Nutcracker, some of which you'll actually find in the other adaptations that we've actually talked about, though the movie isn't for everyone. But if you want to experience the closest adaptation to the original ballet, then this might be the best adaptation of the Nutcracker. And those are the Nutcracker movies I watched this holiday season. And what I've learned is that, unfortunately, the Nutcracker might be one of those types of media that cannot and probably should not be adapted into film. What makes the Nutcracker such an iconic ballet isn't the story or the characters, it's the music. People remember the Nutcracker through the complicated performances and the music that goes in sync with the dancing, and most filmmakers try to adapt it in a way that makes you lose what makes it so iconic, by expanding its story in bad ways or altering the music to where it's unrecognizable, or just flat out using the entire album and only using small chunks in ways that don't make any sense. Though originally adapted from a short story, the ballet left such a major impact in the performing arts as well as the holiday season. I don't say it's impossible, but I really do hope that when people adapt the Nutcracker for the big screen, they treat the material with great respect worthy of the movie theaters. Thanks for watching. Sorry this video doesn't feel like one of my other ones. I kinda had to rush this one out completely, but I will give you guys an update on what I have planned for 2025. Thanks for watching. This is the Angel Star signing out.